city of Gran Quivera. This is huge! Look at all these giant buildings! Oh, welcome to another Down the Rabbit Hole video. Doing another Star Frontiers video, and this one is kind of a personal anecdote thing, got a kind of personal memory attachment to it, but a lot of people really like my Star Frontiers stuff, so I thought, hey, I might as well talk about this one thing that it kind of always drove me bonkers about Star Frontiers, specifically the Assault Scout. Now, this is the poster child ship. I've mentioned it many times before. It's kind of the Millennium Falcon of Star Frontiers. And it always made me think, how big is that ship? Because, I mean, you can look at the deck plans and the floor plates and all that kind of stuff, which I talked about in my previous video, but how big is it? Like, I don't grasp in my head just how large this vehicle is until I experienced something that made me immediately go, oh, that's how big an Assault Scout is. So, I'm going to share that with the other Star Frontiers people out here. So, when I first got the books and I saw the ship and all the different module covers and that, I remember thinking to myself, how big is that? Like, if you were to put it beside, I don't know, the Millennium Falcon. And honestly, we don't, at that time, didn't really have a strong grasp, unless you're on the set of Star Wars, or specifically Empire Strikes Back, where they had a full-size Millennium Falcon built. How big is the Millennium Falcon? You kind of see it fly through space and you see characters standing around bits of it, but how big is the thing? Similarly, with the Assault Scout, I was like, I can't grasp how big that is. Now, I would look in the module rules and it would say it's a size 3 hull size. That means it's 50 meters from top to bottom or front to back, depending on your perspective. And I thought, right, 50 meters. How big is that? Because I have no idea. I can't grasp, like, what is that in something I can think of? What is something that I can grasp hold of that makes me think, that's how big an Assault Scout is? And then I had a personal experience that explained it, and I'll get to that first. So I'm sitting there thinking to myself, okay, what do I have in context that's about 50 meters? I had thought to myself, the Assault Scout bears a striking resemblance to the Phoenix from Battle of the Planets / Gatchaman. It's kind of very similar shape and size, and I thought to myself, or maybe size anyway, I thought, does that seem about the right size of vehicle? It's so hard to tell how big that thing is. I mean, it's big enough that, vehicles can go up into the little wing pods, so it's like, all right, it's really big, but I can't quite figure out, occasionally characters would stand, like, I used to think, okay, well, that little bubble that's on the top of it, how big is that to give me an idea of scale? And in very confusing times, there would be different representation of just how big that bubble is. I mean, in the same episode, Ryu / Tiny would stick his head up through that thing like it's a little window. And then in the same episode, Ken and Jun, or Mark and Princess, would elevate up into that bubble, and there's plenty of room for them. So I'm like, well, I don't know how big that thing is. Is it like a 5-foot circle across? Is it 5 feet in radius, diameter? Is it 5 feet in radius? Is it 10 feet in diameter? I don't know. I can't tell from the size of it. And, okay, how big would that thing be compared to an Assault Scout? That at least would give me an idea. Nah, it didn't really work. I mean, I'm guessing that thing might be 75, maybe even 100 meters, if you consider there's like a whole airplane up the back of it. So I thought to myself, okay, Phoenix has got not a good comparison. What about real-world airplanes? Well, having done my research, I found out that the DC-8 is like 45 meters long from front to back, and the DC-10 is 55 meters from front to back. So it gives us an idea, and I've been on board a DC-10 once when I was a kid, but I can't really use that as a comparison because all airplanes, you really just got that central tube and then a couple of wings, right? So that doesn't grasp for me how large the Assault Scout is. Until in the late 80s, when I lived in the UK, I lived in Cheshire, and near where I lived, there was a science astronomy kind of a setup, a place called Jodrell Bank. And Jodrell Bank is well known. It's been around for a long time. I actually got a job there once because I was just like, this is totally a place for me to work at. And the planetarium was running, and there was all these kinds of exhibits and things for people to check out in the visitor center, which I heard they tore down not long after I left. but I think maybe it's being rebuilt. I'll put the website to Jodrell Bank now down on the thing. I have this very fuzzy photograph of me. That is actually me with the radar dish or radio tower, a telescope in the distance. It's not the greatest picture, but it's the only one I could find with me and the dish in the same shot. So take my word for it, I worked there. In fact, I can prove it because I've still got my Jodrell Bank staff badge. So trust me, I worked there. So, what does that have to do with Star Frontiers? Well, of course, I'm very much into it at this point. It's the late 80s. I'm really getting my campaign fleshed out in case I get some players to join me in it, which I did eventually. And I remember looking at the sides of the telescope, the things, the big struts that would hold it up. And I was perusing all the information sitting around, and I was like, oh my god, those side hinges, whatever you want to call them, the big rotating dish, I can't even think of a good word for it, those balustrades that hold up the whole thing, they are 50 meters from top to bottom. And that, to me, was a light bulb moment. I was like, oh, that's how big an assault scout is. And it's, if you look at these pictures, those side things, hinges, are actually towers, I guess I'll call them. The towers are roughly assault scout in shape, and they've got a thick sort of nose at the top. They've got, you know, little struts that go out almost like the wings of an assault scout, and it wouldn't be too hard to kind of superimpose, here's what an assault scout is over those towers. And I was like, oh my god, now I've finally got a reference in my head of what an assault scout is physically in size and shape. Until you go to Jodrell Bank, you don't really have a grasp of it, but it's big. It's really big. 150 feet, if that helps at all. And I thought to myself, right, so in my adventures in my head of like, okay, let's say we've got some adventurers and they've got an assault scout and they're doing something and, oh no, somebody had to go up to the very tip of the ship and then they fall out and they're like hanging on for dear life. How high up are they? They're really high up. Like, that is not a fall you want to take. So I was like, okay, now I know how big an assault scout is. That is a perfect frame of reference for me, and I wanted to share that because that was something that had kind of been a surprise to me to experience. So if you ever get a chance, if you're ever in Cheshire in the UK, I guess travel right now is not really a thing, but if you're a local, if you live nearby Jodrell Bank, and if you're ever seeing the telescope, just think to yourself, those towers on the side, those hinges, those are the size of an assault scout. I learned that, and now you have too, I guess. Alright, well, I hope that little personal anecdote is fun and interesting to learn for anybody who's into Star Frontiers. I've got many more ideas coming my way. So, until next time, we'll see you down the rabbit hole.